Chapter 19. Ash vs. Paul. First rivalry battle. It was now time for the group to depart Vermilion City. Just like with Cerulean City, they had an eventful time there. They were able to put an end to Team Rocket's plan. Ash had obtained a new Pokemon, and he also received his third gym badge. It was somewhat sad to leave the big city once again to travel the wilderness for a while, but hopefully, it wouldn't take as long to get to Celadon City as it did to Vermilion City. Brock had made sure to stock up on supplies that morning. But before they fully continued on their journey, there was one thing they had left to do. The group showed up right outside Vermilion City at 11 o'clock sharp, but that was mainly because of Ash. There was no way he would give Paul the pleasure of mocking him because he can't even get to a scheduled battle on time. As expected, once they arrived at the destined location, Paul was already waiting there. Contrary to Ash, who had a serious and determined look, Paul was not displaying any emotion. Despite the group waving at him in an attempt to be friendly, Paul did not give any sort of greeting in return. He merely walked up to Ash before even saying anything. "Are you ready?" Paul asked. "I am, and I'm going to show you that bonding with Pokemon is just as important as training them," Ash responded. "Pikachu!" Pikachu agreed. Paul gave a light grunt and said nothing else before heading off to presumably his side of the impromptu battlefield. "I know you'll win, Ash. The bond you have with your Pokemon is stronger than anyone else I know," Serena told him. "I haven't let you down yet, and I won't start now, Serena." Ash replied, giving her a thumbs up. Serena blushed and went over to stand on the side of the battlefield with Misty, who was already over there. Brock went to stand between Ash and Paul to be the judge. "How many Pokemon do you want to use?" Ash called across the field. "We shall do a 4-on-4 battle. There's no need to do a full 6-on-6 battle yet. The first person who has 4 Pokemon unable to battle shall be declared the winner," Paul said back. "That's fine with me," Ash replied. "This will be a 4-on-4 Pokemon battle between Ash and Paul. There will be no time limit. Trainers may begin as soon as they're ready," Brock shouted. Pikachu sparked its cheeks at Paul. It really wanted a piece of this trainer for the way he has acted so far. "Hold on, I'll make sure you get to battle with Paul, Pikachu," Ash told the rodent. "I'm saving you for last." Pikachu decided that was acceptable and hopped off Ash's shoulder to stand by, while Ash decided on his first Pokemon. "Bulbasaur, I choose you!" Ash called as he threw the ball forward. "Bulbasaur!" The plant reptile cried as it emerged from the Pokeball. "Rhyhorn, stand by for battle!" Paul said once he threw his Pokeball as well. The Spikes Pokemon emerged from its Pokeball and gave a roar. Serena cringed once she saw this Rhyhorn appear. It looked a lot scarier than the one she had at home. "We should be able to win this one because of the type advantage, Bulbasaur," Ash told it. Bulbasaur gave a short nod of agreement. "Only beginners think they can win because of type advantage," Paul commented. He then called out, "Rhyhorn, use takedown." Rhyhorn then charged towards Bulbasaur. "Going on the offense, huh? We're ready for that. Bulbasaur, leap over the horn," Ash yelled. Bulbasaur then leaped high into the air away from the charging Rhyhorn. "I knew you'd do that," Paul said. "Rhyhorn, Rock Blast!" Rhyhorn immediately stopped charging and sent up a series of boulders at Bulbasaur. Because Bulbasaur was in the air, it was unable to dodge and was hit by every one of the boulders. "Bulbasaur!" Ash cried. As Bulbasaur began falling, Paul quickly called out, "Now, use Horn Attack!" Rhyhorn reared back its horn and struck Bulbasaur hard, which sent it flying backwards. Paul must have made Ash think he was charging straight forward for an attack, but that was just a decoy to get Bulbasaur in the air where it was helpless. He wants to know how Ash reacts to certain situations. Misty deduced as she watched from the sidelines. "You don't think Ash is that predictable, do you?" Serena asked Misty. "I don't know. Ash has given some surprises in the past, especially during his gym battles. However, if he doesn't come up with something creative in this battle and Paul figures that out, he's going to be in serious trouble," Misty replied. "Bulbasaur, can you stand?" Ash asked as it slowly got to its feet. "Sar!" Bulbasaur cried as it stood, ready for more. "Great perseverance, Bulbasaur," Ash praised. "Use Razor Leaf!" A flurry of leaves shot out from Bulbasaur and struck the Rhyhorn, who yelled in pain from the super effective hit. "Great job, Bulbasaur! That one hit! Let's do another Razor Leaf!" Ash called. Bulbasaur complied as it shot another series of sharp leaves. "Seriously? You're using the same attack in a row?" "Rhyhorn, dig underground to avoid the attack!" Paul yelled. Rhyhorn quickly began to burrow underground, and he had made it completely under by the time the leaves reached it. They soared above the hole, not hitting anything. Ash is doing what I was worried about. He is so determined to beat Paul that he isn't playing smart. He saw an attack that worked and did it again, which was a big mistake, Misty said. I've got to focus, Ash thought. It was wrong of me to use the same attack twice in a row. That gave Paul a chance to counter it the second time. Be careful, Bulbasaur! Rhyhorn could be anywhere! Ash shouted. Bulbasaur stood still and tried to listen for Rhyhorn underneath the ground. It soon heard movement beneath it and prepared to jump out of the way, but then there was silence. Bulbasaur stopped moving for a second, momentarily confused by the silence and lack of movement beneath it. It had dealt with several dig attacks before, so why was this one not making any noise? Suddenly, Rhyhorn burst out of the ground right underneath it and used the momentum for a horn attack. Bulbasaur was sent sailing high into the air. Now, finish with Stone Edge, Paul ordered. Quick, Bulbasaur, use Leech Seed, Ash yelled. Bulbasaur managed to launch a Leech Seed from its bulb as Rhyhorn shot a large chunk of rock at it. The seed fell on top of Rhyhorn as vines began to cover it and sap its energy. Unfortunately, the huge chunk of rock struck Bulbasaur while it was in the air also, which sent it plummeting to the ground. Bulbasaur, are you okay? Ash asked worriedly. Bulbasaur tried to get back up, but was unsuccessful and fell over again, this time not getting up. Bulbasaur is unable to battle. Rhyhorn is the winner, Brock yelled. Oh, Bulbasaur lost, Serena said sadly. Yeah, Paul was really trained that Rhyhorn well. Bulbasaur never even heard it while it was underground. It was able to win even though Bulbasaur had the type advantage. It was a good thing he got that Leech Seed on it though, Misty said. Return, Bulbasaur, Ash called before giving a sad look at the Pokeball. You were great. Now take a long-earned rest. You have a really predictable battling style so far, Paul commented across the field. You did exactly what I thought you would do when I ordered a full-on charge attack by having Bulbasaur jump over it where it was completely vulnerable to attacks. Your next mistake was to have Bulbasaur use the same attack in a row after the first one struck, which is how I was able to counter it easily. Ash grit his teeth as he knew Paul was right. He wasn't facing some starter trainer like Samurai was. Paul was very capable, despite Ash not wanting to admit it. Ash thought through his options on what his next Pokemon should be. Rhyhorn was really strong, and Charmander, Pidgeotto, Butterfree, and Pikachu were all weak against rock and ground types. Ash was getting the feeling that Pidgeotto and Pikachu steel-type moves wouldn't cut it with Paul. He only had one option. Squirtle, I choose you! Ash yelled as he threw the ball forward. Squirtle! The turtle Pokemon said once it came out of the ball. It then saw the Rhyhorn in front of it and gave a hard stare. This was its first battle coming with Ash, so it wanted to prove itself. Rhyhorn, use takedown! Paul ordered once more. Despite the Leech Seed sapping away its energy, Rhyhorn pushed forward for a full-speed charge. Ash was about to order his Squirtle to leap over Rhyhorn, but then remembered what happened last time with Bulbasaur. He had to think of something else. Squirtle, use Withdraw! Ash called. He hoped Squirtle's hard shell was enough to counter Rhyhorn's stone body. Squirtle saw the incoming takedown and immediately hid inside of its shell. The Rhyhorn slammed in the Squirtle, which sent it sailing into the air. Please be okay, Squirtle, Ash said to himself. To his great relief, Squirtle emerged from its shell looking slightly bruised, but still very capable of battle. Great! Now use Water Gun! Ash yelled. Squirtle took a deep breath and blew a stream of water out of its mouth down towards the Rhyhorn, striking it dead on. The rock Pokemon roared in pain at taking a second super effective attack. That and the Leech Seed were too much for it, and therefore it fell to the ground. Way to go, Squirtle! Ash cheered. I bet you anything, Paul had Rhyhorn use Takedown again on purpose to see if Ash would fall for the same thing twice. He wants to know as much as he can about how Ash battles and learn from that. I hate to say it, but Paul's a pretty smart battler, Misty said. Ash is a good battler too, Serena defended. I never said he wasn't, but Ash needs to realize this isn't like a battle he's had before, so he needs to learn Paul's strategy as well, Misty replied. Paul wordlessly returned Rhyhorn to its Pokeball and said nothing. This angered Ash a little bit that Paul didn't even tell his Rhyhorn a good job. Fearow, stand by for battle! Paul yelled as he threw the Pokeball to release the large bird. Uh-oh, a Fearow, Ash said as he and Serena pulled out his Pokedexes to scan it. Fearow, the Beak Pokemon in the evolved form of Fearow. Fearow has a very bad temper and has huge wings which can enable it to fly all day long, the Pokedexes said. Fearow, use Leer, Paul ordered. Fearow's eyes glowed blue for a second and gave Squirtle an intimidating stare which caused it to shrink back. Don't be scared, Squirtle! Use Water Gun! Ash called. Squirtle once again shot out a jet of water from its mouth, which Fearow dodged easily. Now, go in for a Drill Peck, Paul told the Fearow. The Beak Pokemon shot forward at great speed as its beak began to spin in a drill-like fashion. Try Bubble Beam, Ash yelled. Use Agility to get out of the way, Paul countered. The bubbles missed its target completely as Fearow was too quick and shot out of the way. It then resumed flying towards Squirtle for a Drill Peck attack. Not knowing what else to do, Squirtle hid in its shell as Fearow descended upon it. Fearow then began to ruthlessly peck at Squirtle's shell. Ash knew his Squirtle must be taking serious damage despite being protected inside of its shell, and knew he had to do something. But Paul had other plans. Grab Squirtle in your talons, Fearow, so it can't get away, Paul yelled. Fearow then latched on the Squirtle's shell with its sharp talons as it continued to assault Squirtle with its Drill Peck. Ash knew this was bad. He couldn't risk Squirtle to come out of its shell to attack because there was no doubt Fearow would aim for its weak spot then. On the other hand, Squirtle couldn't hide in its shell forever either. Ash, you should return Squirtle before it's too late, Serena called. Ash was about to comply, but he noticed something weird about Squirtle's shell. It started to move in a circular pattern. It then began to get faster and faster until pretty soon Fearow began to spin around as well because its talons were latched on the Squirtle. The force of Squirtle's spinning was beginning to kick up dust as it began to spin even faster. Ash smiled when he realized Squirtle must have just learned Rapid Spin. That's awesome, Squirtle! Now, break free of Fearow! Ash yelled. The force of the spinning shell was enough to break free of Fearow's talons, and Squirtle had now become a spinning projectile. Fearow, meanwhile, had become extremely dizzy from being spun around so much. Snap out of it, Fearow! Paul yelled. Quick, Squirtle! Turn that Rapid Spin into a spinning tackle! Ash called. Squirtle continued spinning into the air as it came closer and closer to Fearow. The Beak Pokemon was too dizzy to get out of the way and was knocked straight in its face by Squirtle's shell. Ash knew this was his chance while Fearow was still dizzy. Follow up with Bubble Beam! He shouted. Squirtle came out of its shell and launched a barrage of bubbles at Fearow, who could do nothing but let them slam into it. It shrieked in pain. Now, Skull Bash! Ash called. Squirtle reared its head back and slammed it into Fearow's midsection as hard as it could, once again causing the Beak Pokemon to yelp. Now, finish this with Water Gun! Ash continued. Ash continued, thinking this was the end. Before Squirtle launched its Water Gun, it suddenly got an extremely pained look on its face and fell over onto the ground, not getting up. Squirtle, what's wrong? Ash cried, but Squirtle only gave a weak noise in response. Squirtle is unable to battle. Fearow is the winner, Brock called. What do you think happened, Misty? Serena asked. Squirtle was doing so well. I think it's because Squirtle had taken a serious amount of damage from Fearow's Drill Peck attack. Not to mention, it had sustained damage from Rhyhorn as well. Then Ash began telling Squirtle to launch a series of attacks at Fearow while it was dizzy. While this normally is a good strategy, if Squirtle was still healthy, it was too badly damaged to keep up with Ash's commands and became exhausted, Misty explained. Ash happened to overhear Misty telling this to Serena and hung his head low. He had gotten too excited when Squirtle learned Rapid Spin and got too caught up in the battle to worry about how Squirtle felt. It would have been different if Squirtle was his last Pokemon, but he still had 4 other perfectly healthy Pokemon that could battle. He should have returned Squirtle while he had the chance to let it rest for a minute before using it again. He had to be careful from now on. He was making too many mistakes in his desire to win against Paul, and it was costing him the match. Return, Squirtle! Ash called to return the exhausted Pokemon. Thanks, Squirtle. You were great. It was my fault you ended up like this. Ash looked across the battlefield and saw Paul glaring at him. Paul was certainly not keeping it a secret that he thought of Ash as a poor battler right now. If Ash lost, there would be no way Ash could prove to Paul that his methods were wrong. Pokemon do need love and support just like they do with hard training to be the very best they can be. Okay, I'm facing someone who's the complete opposite of me. I get that. I can't get carried away. I can still win this, Ash thought. Phew? Pikachu asked its trainer curiously. "I'll be fine, buddy," Ash responded. He then went through his remaining options in his head. There was no doubt Pikachu would have a huge advantage over flying types like Fearow, but he still wanted to save it for last if necessary. Pidgeotto and Butterfree would no doubt be able to match Fearow in speed in the air, but Fearow was far too aggressive, so Ash would need to keep it closer to the group like he did with Squirtle. "Charmander, I choose you!" Ash yelled as he released the Fire Salamander. Serena suddenly felt one of her Pokeballs open up to reveal her Charla had popped out of its Pokeball. "Charla, why did you come out of your Pokeball?" Serena asked in surprise. Char! It replied in pointing to Ash's Charmander. "Oh, I see. You want to watch Ash's Charmander battle, don't you?" "Charmander!" Charla confirmed before waving at Ash's Charmander. Charmander turned towards Charla to see it waving at it, causing it to get an embarrassed look on its face. Misty, Brock, and Serena chuckled while Ash stood there, confused as to what was going on. Paul merely rolled his eyes. This group was pretty annoying to him. "Are you done playing around yet to get back to the battle?" Paul called Ash, which caused him to glare back. "You bet. We're not finished yet," Ash yelled. "The battle may start once again after the brief interruption," Brock announced. "Charmander, Fearow should be weak by now. Use Flamethrower," Ash said, the Fire Salamander complying. "Dodge it, Fearow, and take to the sky," Paul ordered. Fearow had long since recovered from its dizziness and returned to the sky once again, completely dodging the Flamethrower. It then glared down menacingly at Charmander. "Use Razor Wind, Fearow," Paul yelled. Fearow gave a huge flap of its wings as what looked like glowing blasts of air shot through the sky. They quickly sailed through the air and hit Charmander dead on. "You okay, Charmander?" Ash asked once his Pokemon was hit by the attack. "Char," it replied as it quickly shook it off. "Try another Flamethrower," Ash yelled. "Dodge it again, Fearow, and prepare for a Drill Peck," Paul said. The Fearow once again easily dodged the Flamethrower. Charmander kept trying to hit over and over, but Fearow dodged every time due to its speed. "Remember the training we did with moving targets, Charmander?" Ash called to it. "Try to predict Fearow's movements." Charmander then began to concentrate as it looked at the way Fearow moved through the air and its pattern. While Fearow began to charge up for a Drill Peck, Charmander saw its chance. "Char!" It yelled as it blew a Flamethrower through the air. Its timing and prediction was perfect as the flames crashed right into Fearow, causing it to yell in pain. It began to fall to the ground quickly, but Ash didn't want to give it time to recover. "Charmander, quick, jump into the air and use Metal Claw," Ash called. Charmander ran forward to where Fearow was falling and leaped up towards it. Before Fearow could react, Charmander's claws on its hands glowed as it slashed at Fearow with its right arm. Both Pokemon hit the ground. Charmander landed on both of its feet, while Fearow fell on its back. It had been defeated. "Fearow is unable to battle. Charmander's the winner," Brock yelled. Charla cheered happily upon seeing Charmander score a victory. It hoped that Charmander could see it win sometime soon as well. "Way to go, Ash! You've got 2 already! Just 2 more to go!" Serena encouraged. Once again, Paul returned his Fearow without saying a word to it. Ash grew angry again upon seeing that. Couldn't he at least give some form of thanks to it? "Magby, stand by for battle!" Paul shouted as he released a Pokemon the group had never seen before. The Magby had a red body with a yellow flame marking on its stomach and a yellow rounded beak. It had lumps on its head, a spike on its back, and its hands and feet had claws at the end of them. "Whoa, what's that?" Ash asked in surprise as he and Serena took out their Pokedexes to scan it. Magby, the live cold Pokemon. It is found in volcanic craters and can spit flames at 1100 degrees Fahrenheit, the Pokedexes said. "I've never heard of that Pokemon before," Ash said in wonder. Serena was thinking along the same lines as Ash. "That must be one of the newly discovered baby Pokemon," Brock explained to Ash. "The only way you can get one is by breeding a Magmar. I wonder where Paul was able to obtain one." "Where'd you get that Pokemon, Paul?" Ash asked curiously. He couldn't help himself. "That's really none of your business," Paul replied rudely. "Focus on the battle. I'm losing my patience by your distractions." "Well, whether that's newly discovered Pokemon or not, Charmander and I can still take it," Ash said with determination. "Charmander!" the Pokemon agreed. "Magby, use Smog!" Paul ordered. The baby Pokemon unleashed a brown fog from its mouth that soon spread around Charmander, causing it to cough violently. Before it could recover, Magby appeared in the smog as well and slammed into Charmander for a feint attack. Charmander was knocked backwards onto its back, but it wasn't done just yet. It quickly got back on its feet, ready for more. "All right, Charmander, use Flamethrower," Ash commanded. "Counter it with your own Flamethrower, Magby," Paul countered. Both flamethrowers flew from the recipient's mouth and collided midway. After a brief standstill, Charmander's flamethrower began to overpower Magby's as it began to push towards it. Suddenly, there was a large explosion and Magby was blown backwards onto its back from the force. Charmander only received minimal damage from the blast because the explosion was closer to Magby. "Get up, Magby!" Magby looked tired from the blast, but still looked ready to fight. "That's better. Use Confuse Ray," Paul ordered. Magby's eyes glowed blue for a second as a white ray came from its eyes and engulfed Charmander. When the ray died down, Charmander had a dazed look on its face and was making funny movements. "Oh no, Charmander just became confused," Misty gazed. "So it'll be a lot harder for Charmander to attack Magby now," Serena said. "Char! Charla called, trying to get Charmander to snap out of it. "Charmander, try a flamethrower!" Ash called. Charmander did use a flamethrower, but instead of using it on Magby, it used it on Ash. "Whoa! Not me!" Ash cried as he and Pikachu ducked. "Finish this with a feint attack," Paul ordered. Magby then ran up at Charmander while it was dazed and delivered a sucker punch, knocking it backwards. Charmander fell on the ground in defeat. "Charmander is unable to battle. The winner is Magby," Brock shouted. Charla sulked sadly once it saw Charmander was knocked out. "I thought Charmander was gonna win against a fellow fire type," Serena said sadly as Ash returned Charmander. There was no doubt Charmander would overpower Magby in that regard. Paul must have realized that, which is why he ordered Magby to use Confuse Ray, Misty commented. Ash gave a sigh. He only had one Pokemon left, while Paul still had two. He then turned to his faithful buddy Pikachu and gave a nod. "You're up, Pikachu," he said. Pikachu nodded and ran forward. It sparked its cheeks at Magby and Paul. It had seen the way Paul acts and really wanted to win this one for its trainer. "All right, Pikachu, start things off with a Thunder Shock," Ash said. "Magby, counter with Flamethrower," Paul shouted. Both Pokemon launched their respective attacks at each other. They collided in midair and made an explosion. "Use Quick Attack, Pikachu," Ash commanded. "Use Confuse Ray, Magby," Paul yelled. Pikachu began the dash forward as Magby's eyes began to glow. But before it could launch the Confuse Ray, Pikachu was already upon it and slammed into Magby. "Now, before Magby can recover, use Thunder Shock," Ash called. "Use Flamethrower," Paul ordered. Once again, Pikachu was too quick for Magby as it shocked the live coal Pokemon before it was able to blow Flamethrower with its mouth. It then landed on the ground and didn't get back up. "Magby is unable to battle. Victory goes to Pikachu," Brock shouted. "Awesome. I knew Pikachu would be able to handle it," Serena said happily. "Awesome job, buddy. Just one more. Let's turn it around," Ash said, giving Pikachu a thumbs up. "Pika!" the rodent responded, making a V shape with its fingers. Paul glared as he returned the Magby to its Pokeball. "You should have been able to overpower that Pikachu. Its speed is no excuse," he muttered to it before pulling out his final Pokeball. "So I take it you're gonna use Weepinbell, now since grass types are strong against electric types?" Ash guessed. "Weepinbell?" Paul questioned. "Yeah, the Weepinbell that we saw at the Pewter City Pokemon Center," Ash replied. "Oh, that thing. I got rid of it a long time ago. Paul said while frowning. "You what?" Ash yelled. That Weepinbell was a lost cause. It couldn't even beat types that it was strong against, so it wasn't worth keeping, Paul replied while glaring. Ash became angry upon hearing that. If Paul would have spent time training with Weepinbell like any caring trainer, it could have become strong. But he released it and never gave the poor Pokemon a chance to prove itself again. Serena, Brock, and Misty were all thinking along the same lines as Ash as they frowned deeply upon hearing what Paul said about Weepinbell. Since it wasn't Weepinbell, the group waited in anticipation to see what Paul's final Pokemon would be. "Elekid, stand by for battle!" Paul yelled as he threw his Pokeball to reveal another Pokemon the group had never seen before. It was a yellow, round-bodied Pokemon with black stripes. It had bulky arms and rounded toeless feet. It had horns on its head that resembled the prongs on a plug. "I've never seen that Pokemon before either," Ash commented as he and Serena once again pulled out their Pokedexes. Elekid, the electric Pokemon, A weak electric current flows between its horns. It rotates its arms quickly to build electricity, said the Pokedexes. That must be another baby Pokemon. I wonder how Paul was able to obtain them, Ash wondered. I'll go ahead and let you attack first. I won't even tell Elekid to move, Paul said. This surprised Ash. He was wondering what Paul was up to. There had to be a catch. Why? Asked Ash. Just do it before I change my mind, Paul replied. Fine! Pikachu! Thunderbolt! Ash yelled. Pikachu fired off the large electric attack. As Paul promised, he didn't even tell Elekid to get out of the way. The lightning struck Elekid dead on, but it didn't appear to be doing anything to it at all. Ash and Pikachu were very surprised. But how? That Thunderbolt should have done some damage, Ash wondered. That was the reason I told you to go first. I wanted to see if you would actually use an electric attack. They have no effect on Elekid, so all you did was supercharge it, Paul told Ash. Dang it, I should have known better than to fall for something like that. Ash berated himself. Elekid, use your own Thunderbolt, Paul called. Elekid then shot out a massive bolt of electricity at Pikachu that looked about as powerful as Lieutenant Surge's Raichu shocks. The bad part was the grass they were battling on wasn't sturdy enough for Pikachu to stand on its tail again like at the gym. It had no choice but to endure the Thunderbolt. Pikachu yelled in pain as the attack struck and was sent sailing backwards. Pikachu! Ash cried. Pikachu slowly got to its feet and shook itself to once again get a serious expression on its face. Why don't you just give up? Paul smirked. No way! Use agility, Pikachu! Ash yelled. Pikachu then began to run in circles around Elekid. Unlike Lieutenant Surge's Raichu, Elekid was fairly fast as well and able to keep up with Pikachu. It then began to shoot various thunder shocks as Pikachu was running. They were fortunately missing Pikachu, but were getting close with every shot. Seeing how this was no good, Ash knew he had to go on the offense. Quick attack, Pikachu! He called. Pikachu suddenly changed directions, which caught Elekid off guard. It then dashed forward and collided right into Elekid, which knocked it onto the ground. You slam! Ash shouted. Elekid, brick break! Paul countered. Pikachu leaped into the air and began to charge up its tail. It then began to bring its tail down onto Elekid, but Elekid blocked it with brick break. The two Pokemon were now in a furious battle of wills as they tried to push the other one back with their other attacks. The intensity of their standstill was beginning to get them tired. Unfortunately, Paul had another trick up his sleeve. How unfortunate for you that your Pikachu is tied up. But Elekid still has a free arm. Elekid, Thunder Punch, Paul commanded. Seeing what was coming, Ash reacted quickly. Pikachu, use Iron Tail! Pikachu saw the incoming electricity charged first and quickly changed tactics as it moved away from Elekid and charged up its tail as it began to glow white. It then swung its tail in a circular arc and let it crash into Elekid's fist. The resulting combination of attacks caused an explosion that blew both Pokemon backwards. Both trainers and spectators awaited anxiously to see which Pokemon were standing. The smoke finally cleared to reveal both Elekid and Pikachu collapsed onto the ground. Neither of them were getting up. Both Elekid and Pikachu are unable to battle. Since this was each of your fourth Pokemon, this match is a draw, Brock yelled. Both Misty and Serena were very surprised. Out of all the outcomes, they were certainly not expecting a draw. Oh, Ash, Serena said sadly. She had wanted her crush to win so badly. Pikachu! Ash yelled as he ran over to it to scoop it in his arms. All right, Elekid, return, Paul muttered. This match sure looked like a draw to me, Brock repeated as he went over to Pikachu. Ash grit his teeth. He wasn't able to beat Paul. I might as well have lost, Ash mumbled as he looked up at Paul, who was approaching him. The match was judged as a tie. A tie it will be, Paul said. We don't have to end the match at 4 Pokemon. We still have 2 Pokemon left to battle with. Let's use them, Ash suggested. No thanks. I've already got a pretty good idea of what kind of battler you are. If I use my other 2 Pokemon on yours, I would definitely win. Take your tie and run with it for now so you don't lose, Paul replied. Paul then turned and began to walk away from the group. Then prove it! Let's battle again, Paul! Ash called after him. Brock put his hand on Ash's shoulder to calm him. Ash, let it go, he said gently. Serena and Misty soon joined Ash and Brock as they watched Paul walk off. At least it was a tie, not a loss, Misty said, trying to cheer Ash up. That doesn't matter. Paul and I had this battle to prove which of our training methods were better. I'm no closer to showing Paul that caring for Pokemon is important as well than if I had lost, Ash replied. Serena looked at Ash sadly. She wished there was something she could say to Ash to make him feel better, but she was at a complete loss. If anything, Paul thinks lower of me now than he did before because of all the mistakes I made during the battle, Ash sighed. Ash felt the stirring in his arms and looked to see Pikachu had awoken. Thanks for your hard work, buddy. It was my fault we didn't win, Ash told the rodent. Ash, try to think of this as a learning experience, Brock suggested, which caused Ash to look at him in surprise. Brock then continued, the outcome of the battle might very well have been because of the mistakes you made. That was because you were too focused on beating Paul rather than forming strategies for the battle. Finally, finding something to say, Serena added, that's right, Ash. Remember my time at the Cerulean Battle Chateau? I was so focused on my emotions at the time that I was unable to focus on the match and almost ended up losing it. It wasn't until Leaf talked to me that I was able to focus on the battles themselves again. Ash realized the truth in his friend's words and nodded. You're right, he said. I'm going to follow your example and keep a cool head during battles from now on and not get upset no matter what the circumstances. Everyone smiled upon hearing that. That's good to hear, Ash, Serena told him. I'm sure you'll battle Paul again, and next time, you'll win for sure. Your bond with your Pokemon is clearly much stronger than his. Thanks, Serena, Ash replied. What do you say we head back to the Vermilion City Pokemon Center one more time so I can heal my Pokemon before we set out for the next city? Then, let's get some lunch, because I'm starving. The group laughed merrily at seeing Ash was back to his usual self. Despite this, as they headed back into the Vermilion City limits, they all knew that this wasn't the last time they would see Paul. Ash and Paul were polar opposites, so circumstances would dictate they would cross paths once more. When that time came, Ash would be ready. He was determined to never tie or lose to Paul again.